Good morning. Today is Thursday, March 23rd, 2023. You know, of course, that in the Torah scroll, there are no vowels, only letters, and no punctuation. But there are a handful of unique marks and irregularities that are telling us something about the text. And one of them is at the very beginning of our Torah portion, where the Torah portion begins, VaYikra el Moshe, God called to Moshe. The word VaYikra is spelled Vav, Yud, Kuf, Resh, Aleph, VaYikra, occurs many, many times in the Torah. But here, in this instance, the word VaYikra is spelled the same way, Vav, Yud, Kuf, Resh, Aleph, but the last letter, Aleph, is miniature. It is noticeably smaller than the other writing. And it's a very strange thing. Why should one letter be smaller than all of the others? So one of the famous commentators known as Baal HaTurim gives the following answer, that the reason that it's smaller is because Moshe asked God to leave the letter off completely as a way to demonstrate Moshe's humility. How does that demonstrate it? Because there are two Hebrew words. One is VaYikra, and the other is VaYikar. VaYikra means, and they both mean the same thing, an encounter. To call to or to encounter someone, but VaYikra, with an Aleph at the end, has an implication of a set meeting. I say to you, let's get together, and I invite you into my office, and we sit down, I offer you a cup of coffee, we have a meeting. That's VaYikra. It's a set, important, arranged conversation that shows respect between the two parties. Sit down, pull your chair up, have a cup of coffee, let's talk. That's VaYikra with an Aleph. VaYikar, the same word but without the Aleph, means you and I are walking down the street, we pass each other and I say, hey, how you doing? And we keep going. It's like a chance encounter. We just happen to pass each other and we wave or say hi. How you doing? Fine. Yes. Good. You? Good. Yeah, fine. It's a casual encounter. So, the Baal HaTurim says, when God spoke to Moshe, because, of course, when God is speaking to Moshe, he's not only speaking to Moshe, he's speaking through Moshe to the entire Jewish people. The way that God speaks to Moshe and through Moshe to the entire Jewish people is VaYikra. It is an important thing. We're sitting down. We're in a relationship of intimacy. We're meeting together. This is important. I care about you. I respect you, God says. VaYikra. This is a real, important, significant interaction. Moshe was humble. And Moshe didn't want to write it in the Torah as if to say, I, Moshe, am so important that God is sitting down and inviting me to his office and sitting down, offering me a cup of coffee first. VaYikra Moshe Hashem, God just happened, we passed in the street, God waved and said, by the way, Moshe, here's some rules I want to tell you about. Meaning Moshe wanted to phrase it that way for his own humility. And so, says the Baal HaTurim, God says to Moshe, okay, when you write down the word in the Torah, I understand you would rather it says VaYikar instead of VaYikra. We'll compromise. Write the word VaYikra, God says to Moshe. Write the word VaYikra, the full word with an Aleph at the end, but make the Aleph smaller. You can make it smaller to allude to the fact that you really didn't want it to be there. I'm God, I'm telling you it's got to be there, but we'll compromise, make it smaller, and that's why there's a small Aleph. There's an obvious question. If in fact Moshe wanted the word to say VaYikar without the Aleph, in order to demonstrate his humility and his modesty, And if in fact God recognized that that is an important lesson for Moshe to demonstrate, so that God says, write it smaller, so there'll be some indication of this, why doesn't God just agree with Moshe and let Moshe write the word VaYikra without the Aleph, the way Moshe wants it? If God is agreeing that this is a significant and positive lesson to teach, that we should be people like Moshe, we're not looking for the limelight, I'm not going around publicizing, I had a meeting with God, he told me to sit down, he offered me a cup of coffee, but I don't want to be in the limelight. We had an encounter, I got some messages. If that is a positive thing to have humility, why doesn't God let Moshe write down for all time in the Torah, VaYikra, without the Aleph? So I want to share with you an amazing answer given by Rabbi Menachem Shach, a blessed memory. VaYikra means we had an encounter, a meeting. We sat down, it was planned, it was important, it was with respect. VaYikra it was a coincidence. We happened to be walking down the street in opposite directions. I happened to see you at the corner of my eye. I wave, hi, how you doing? When it comes to our relationship with God, there's a lesson that is even more important than the lesson of humility. And that is VaYikra, the way God relates to us, to Moshe and through Moshe to us. It's not VaYikra. It's not a coincidence. Coincidence does not exist. Coincidence, a wise person once said, is when God chooses to remain anonymous. There is no coincidence. Everything that happens in life happens for a reason. We refer to this as hashgacha pratis. There is God with a specific overview, looking and watching and directing every single thing that happens. It may appear to us to be coincidence. We may not see the pattern or the reason. But there's no such thing as coincidence. If God were to allow writing the word VaYikra in the Torah, it would appear as if that's the relationship God has with us. It's coincidence. God just happened to say these words. But that is so false that even if there's a good reason to write the word without the Aleph, God has a more important reason to write it with the Aleph, so that Moshe, and through Moshe, every single Jew, for all time, every single person knows VaYikra. The relationship we have with God is thought out. It's with respect. It's with intimacy. Come, sit down. Let's be together. Let's understand each other. Let's communicate. That is the most important lesson. There's a famous verse in Tehillim, in Psalms, Psalm 121. Hashem tzilcha al yad yaminecha. God is your shadow at your right hand. The Hasidic masters understand that God relates to us as our shadow relates to us. If I raise my hand, my shadow raises his hand. If I move to the left, the shadow moves to the left. Wherever I go, the shadow is with me. That's the relationship we have with God. God moves with us. Wherever I move in life, God is moving with me. Hashem tzilcha. God is as connected to me and close to me as my own shadow is. That's why VaYikra, a happenstance meeting, that does not exist in our relationship. VaYikra. It's a relationship of intimacy and trust and respect. And so, yes, of course, we'll make the Aleph smaller as a nod to Moshe's humility. But we can't take it away, because the importance of the message of VaYikra is too important to lose. The truth is, every single one of us, if we look in our lives, we see many, many instances where something appears to us to be coincidence at first glance, and it turns out to be divine providence. So many stories happen in your life, in my life. We hear stories, we see it around us. The person that broke their leg on their way to getting on the Titanic, and they were so upset, they missed the ship, they missed the trip. Every single thing happens for a reason. There are no coincidences. I heard this story from Zalman Vyshevsky about the late and great Rabbi Jonathan Sacks. Rabbi Jonathan Sacks, as you know, traveled and lectured hundreds of times a year. He met thousands and thousands of people. He was constantly speaking to people of every single type all over the world. Someone once asked him a question. Rabbi Sacks, which question are you asked most frequently? Rabbi Sacks, what question are you going to ask him? What's the question he gets most frequently? Maybe it's about the Torah's perspective on science, how the Torah relates to daily life, the subjects that he covers so magnificently throughout his life. He was asked this question, and he gave a smile, and he said, the one question that I'm asked more than anything else is, Rabbi Sacks, do you remember me? That's a very illuminating comment on many different levels. But here's the point I want to make. God remembers you. God remembers us. God knows us. God accompanies us. Our relationship with God is a relationship of VaYikra with the Aleph, a personal, intimate, warm, ongoing meeting. The Aleph is small in a nod to Moshe's humility, but it needs to be there because it is essential to our relationship with God at every moment. My friends, I wish you a great day, and I look forward to seeing you soon in person.